The Snow Day Rescue. It had been an ordinary morning in Pine Hollow until the snow came. One moment the sky was grey and calm, and the next, thick flakes swirled through the air like feathers. Benny, a clever raccoon with a knack for solving problems, was just finishing his breakfast when the first snowflake landed on his nose. "Uh-oh," he muttered, brushing it off with a paw. "That's not in the forecast." Ruby, a spirited red squirrel who lived in the tall oak nearby, bounded down from her tree, her bushy tail fluffed up against the cold. "Benny," she called, "you see this snow? It's falling fast." "I see it," Benny replied. "Something tells me this is more than just a flurry." As the two friends stood watching the storm roll in, a flurry of worried chirps echoed from the pine tree across the clearing. "That's Mrs. Wren's nest," Ruby said, her ears twitching. The wind picked up, blowing icy gusts through the trees. Benny and Ruby hurried toward the sound. Nestled high in the branches of the pine was Mrs. Wren's nest. But something was wrong. "Oh no," Ruby gasped. "Mrs. Wren's not there. She must have flown off to find food before the storm hit." "And her babies are trapped," Benny added, peering up into the swaying tree. "We need to get them out of there. Fast." Ruby darted up the trunk, but halfway up she was stopped by the wind. "It's too strong," she called down. "I can't reach the nest on my own." Benny scratched his head. "Okay, we need a plan. First, we need something to protect the babies from the wind and cold. Then we need a way to get them down safely." Ruby scampered back down, shivering. "I've got some moss in my den we can use to keep them warm." "Good idea," Benny said. "And I'll grab my sled. We can build a little pouch to carry them in." The two friends split up. Ruby stuffed her cheeks with soft moss and pine needles, while Benny dragged his sled from under a log and padded it with dry leaves. Soon they met back beneath the tree. Benny carefully tied the moss into a cozy bundle. "Now we just need to reach them." Ruby's eyes lit up. "I know! What if we use the old rope bridge the chipmunks made last summer? It's still hanging between this tree and the maple next to it." Benny looked up. "If I climb the maple and swing the sled across, you can guide it to the nest." They worked quickly. Benny scampered up the maple tree, gripping the sled's rope tightly in his paws. Ruby positioned herself just beneath the nest, bracing against the wind. "Ready?" Benny called. "Ready!" Ruby shouted back. With a deep breath, Benny swung the sled through the air. It arced across the gap and Ruby grabbed it mid-air, guiding it gently into the nest. Inside, 3 tiny baby wrens huddled together, chirping weakly. Ruby wrapped them snugly in the moss bundle and placed them into the sled. "Got them!" she yelled. Benny began to reel the sled back across the rope bridge. The wind howled, but the sled held firm. Inch by inch, it returned to the maple tree, where Benny scooped it up with gentle paws. By the time Ruby scrambled back down, Benny had tucked the moss-wrapped babies into his coat. "Let's get them to my den," he said. "It's warm and dry." The two friends made their way through the snowy woods, pushing against the storm. Finally, they reached Benny's cozy den beneath the roots of an old tree. He set the babies in a nest of blankets and leaves by the fire. "They're safe now," Ruby whispered, watching them settle in. Just as they were catching their breath, a frantic flutter came from the entrance. Mrs. Wren burst in, feathers ruffled and eyes wide. When she saw her babies safe and warm, she let out a grateful chirp. "Oh, thank goodness," she cooed. "I was so worried." Benny smiled. "They were very brave." Ruby nudged him. "And so were we." Outside, the snow kept falling, but inside Benny's den there was warmth, laughter, and the comforting knowledge that friendship, like a good rescue, could weather any storm.